Dear ladies and gentlemen, suffering, something every human being has tasted at some point. Some suffer because of their situations, some because of their thoughts, and some simply because they have made suffering a habit. But the most tragic suffering is when you do not even know why it is happening. You ask, why am I suffering for no reason? Let me tell you, there is no such thing as suffering without a reason. The problem is not the lack of reason, but the lack of awareness of it. Suffering is not coming from the world. It is coming from within you. The world is simply happening as it always has. The sun rises, the wind blows, people act according to their nature. But your suffering is your own inner production. If you can create suffering, can you not also create joy? The choice is yours. You do not suffer because of life itself. You suffer because of the way you perceive and respond to it. The events of life are simply unfolding, neither good nor bad in themselves. It is the mind that assigns meaning to these events, and in that process, suffering is often created. A situation that one person handles with ease and grace may shatter another completely. The difference is not in the situation, but in the way it is experienced internally. Imagine two people walking in the rain. One dances with joy, feeling the freshness of the droplets, savoring the scent of wet earth. Another curses the weather, complains about getting wet, and grumbles about how the day is ruined. The rain is the same, but the experience is vastly different. The suffering of the second person does not come from the rain, it comes from their resistance to it. This is how most suffering works. Life happens, and instead of accepting it as it is, people resist, complain, compare, and agonize over why things are not as they wish them to be. But has life ever promised to align with your personal desires? No. Life simply moves according to its own nature, just as the wind blows, the river flows, and the sun rises and sets. Yet the mind creates unnecessary suffering. It clings to past wounds, replays painful memories, and constantly anticipates future misfortunes. A single negative thought can spiral into a storm of suffering. The mind turns a minor inconvenience into a great tragedy, magnifying discomfort into unbearable pain. Most people do not realize that this suffering is not caused by the world but by their own mind's unchecked habits. Now look at how suffering is created. Suppose someone insults you. Their words are just sounds, vibrations in the air. But the mind captures those words, replays them over and over, attaches meaning to them, and builds a whole story around them. How dare they say this? What do they think of me? Why am I always treated this way? Long after the moment has passed, the suffering continues, not because of the insult itself, but because of the mind's unwillingness to let it go. The same applies to many aspects of life: a rejection, a failure, a loss. These things happen to everyone, but those who suffer most are the ones who dwell on them, reliving them endlessly in their minds. If suffering were truly caused by external events, then everyone experiencing the same event should suffer equally. But that is never the case. Some people rise from failure with even greater determination. Some transform heartbreak into a deeper understanding of life. Some face loss with acceptance and peace. The difference is in how they manage their inner world. If you take control of your own mind, suffering loses its power over you. Instead of being a helpless victim of your thoughts, you can observe them, understand them, and consciously choose which ones to entertain. Just as you would not eat rotten food knowingly, why consume thoughts that only bring you pain? Learning to guide the mind in a healthy direction is the first step toward freedom from suffering. Suffering is self-created, but that also means it can be self-dissolved. If suffering is coming from within you, the question is, are you willing to look inward and take responsibility for it? The human mind is an incredibly powerful tool, capable of creating both immense joy and unbearable suffering. It is like a knife. If used skillfully, it can carve out a masterpiece. If misused, it can cause deep wounds. Most people do not suffer because life is cruel, they suffer because their own mind has turned against them. Instead of being a source of clarity, balance, and creativity, the mind becomes a battleground of doubts, fears, and anxieties. Take a moment to observe your thoughts. How many of them are genuinely useful? How many are bringing you peace, joy, or clarity? And how many are simply looping the same worries, regrets, and fears over and over again? If your own mind were a friend, would you enjoy their company or would you find them exhausting and toxic? For many, their mind is not their best ally but their greatest tormentor. Imagine a wild horse. If trained, it can take you great distances with speed and grace. But if left uncontrolled, it can throw you off its back and trample you in the dirt. The mind is no different. Without awareness, it runs in every direction, dragging you through endless loops of suffering. You recall old failures that happened years ago, but the pain feels fresh, as if they happened today. You anticipate future disasters that may never even occur, and yet the fear grips you as if they are already unfolding. The mind does not differentiate between reality and imagination. Whatever you intensely think about, it makes you experience as real. Many people live entirely in the world of their thoughts, detached from the present moment. They are not suffering their actual life, they are suffering the stories they tell themselves about life. A person lying safely in bed can be in deep agony just by remembering a painful moment from the past or worrying about an uncertain future. Nothing is physically happening to them, yet they are mentally imprisoned. The mind left unchecked becomes an expert in creating unnecessary suffering. It overanalyzes small issues, magnifies discomfort into tragedy, and clings to negativity while ignoring all that is good. A single unpleasant remark from someone can stay in the mind for days, while 100 compliments are easily forgotten. The mind has been conditioned to focus on problems rather than possibilities, on fears rather than freedom. But the problem is not the mind itself. The problem is that most people have never been taught how to use it properly. They assume that thinking is something that happens to them rather than something they can direct consciously. Just as you would not let your body move uncontrollably, why allow your thoughts to run wild without discipline? The mind is your instrument. You are not its servant. With awareness, you can begin to use your mind instead of being used by it. You can choose thoughts that serve you instead of those that drain you. You can step back and observe your emotions without being consumed by them. You can train your mind just as you train your body to function in a way that supports your well-being rather than destroys it. If you learn to master this, suffering will no longer be an involuntary experience. It will become something you can dissolve at will simply by redirecting your attention and choosing how to interpret life. The mind, when properly used, is the key to freedom. When misused, it is the root of suffering. The choice of how to wield it is entirely in your hands. Pain is an unavoidable part of life. The body feels pain when injured, the heart aches when bonds are broken, and the mind experiences distress when faced with uncertainty. But suffering is something different. Pain is a natural signal, a response to something that needs attention. Suffering, on the other hand, is what the mind does with that pain. It is the continuous replaying of hurt, the resistance to what has already happened, the refusal to accept the nature of life. Imagine stepping on a thorn. The sharp pain is immediate, but it lasts only for a moment. If you remove the thorn and take care of the wound, the pain subsides naturally. But what if instead of removing the thorn, you keep pressing on it? What if you start blaming the road, cursing the thorn, and replaying the incident in your mind again and again? The physical pain is long gone, but the mental suffering continues, sometimes for days, months, or even years. This is how most suffering works. Life brings pain in moments, but the mind stretches it indefinitely. A harsh word spoken by someone may hurt in the moment, but instead of letting it go, you carry it with you, analyzing it from every angle, wondering why it was said, feeling wronged and wounded. Days pass, but you still recall that one incident with intensity. The suffering is not in the event itself, it is in your attachment to it. The truth is, life is filled with ups and downs. No one is exempt from loss, failure, rejection, or disappointment. But if you make suffering your way of life, every challenge becomes unbearable, and even the smallest discomfort feels like a great tragedy. The difference between those who suffer endlessly and those who move forward with grace is not in what happens to them, but in how they respond. Some people, when faced with failure, become paralyzed by self-doubt. They replay their mistakes, blame themselves or others, and allow one setback to define their entire future. Others take failure as a lesson, adjust their approach, and move forward with even greater determination. Both groups felt pain, but only one chose to turn it into suffering. Suffering is not just about external events. It is deeply linked to the mind's resistance. When you resist reality, you suffer. If it is raining and you want the sun, your resistance creates frustration. If someone you love leaves, and you refuse to accept it, your resistance creates heartbreak. If you fail at something and dwell on what should have been instead of what is, your resistance creates despair. Life is not happening against you, it is simply happening. Your suffering arises from your belief that life must unfold according to your desires. The more rigidly you hold on to expectations, the more you suffer when life moves in a different direction. But there is another way. Instead of making suffering your constant companion, you can see pain for what it is, a momentary experience, something to learn from, something to let go of. If you treat pain as a teacher rather than an enemy, it transforms. Instead of breaking you, it strengthens you. Instead of consuming you, it shapes you into someone wiser. You cannot avoid pain in life, but you can choose whether or not to suffer. When something painful happens, you can allow yourself to feel it fully, but then let it pass. You do not have to hold on to it, nurture it, and make it part of your identity. If suffering is optional, why choose it? Let pain be a passing cloud, not a permanent storm. Let it come and go, while you remain untouched, like the vast sky beyond it. The past is like a footprint in the sand, visible for a while but eventually washed away by the tides of time. Yet many people carry their past as if it were a heavy chain, dragging it with them everywhere they go. They believe that what happened to them yesterday must define who they are today and who they will be tomorrow. But this is not true. The past is not a prison. It is only a reference, a collection of memories that exist solely in the mind. The only thing truly real is this moment right now. People suffer more from their memories than from reality. Something painful may have happened years ago, but by recalling it over and over, the suffering continues as if it is happening again and again. The body is here in the present, but the mind is trapped in an old moment, replaying scenes that no longer exist. A hurtful word spoken long ago still echoes in the mind. A failure from childhood still defines one's sense of self-worth. A betrayal from the past still shapes one's ability to trust. But tell me, is that event still happening now? Or is it only alive because you are feeding it with your attention? The past has no power over you unless you choose to hold on to it. Yes, things may have happened that were unfair, painful, or deeply disappointing, but every time you recall them with emotion, you relive that pain. It is like reopening a wound that was beginning to heal. If you truly want to be free, you must understand that the past exists only in your memory. If you stop reviving it, its grip on you will loosen. Some people justify their suffering by saying, "But this happened to me. How can I just forget?" It is about realizing that carrying it forward is a choice. If you touch fire and get burned, you do not need to keep your hand in the flames to remember that it hurts. You learn, you heal, and you move on. The past should work the same way. It should teach, not imprison. Think of a river. Water flows continuously, never stopping at any point. If a leaf falls into the river, it drifts away. It does not remain stuck in one place forever. Your past should be like that leaf. Let it move on. Do not block the river of your life by clinging to something that is meant to flow away. There is no rule that says you must suffer for what happened before. Life is ever fresh, ever new. If you allow yourself to be fully present, you will see that the past is powerless unless you keep pulling it into today. Right now, you are free. The only question is, will you allow yourself to be? Expectations are like invisible contracts we create with life, people, and situations. Contracts that no one else has agreed to. When reality does not match these imagined agreements, disappointment arises. The deeper the expectation, the greater the suffering when it is not met. Most people do not suffer because life is cruel. They suffer because they expected life to be something other than what it is. Look at how expectations shape human suffering. You expect people to treat you a certain way, but they behave according to their own nature, not your desires. You expect success at every step, but life has its own rhythm of ups and downs. You expect love to last forever, but people change, situations shift, and sometimes what was once close drifts apart. None of these things are wrong in themselves. But when they do not align with your expectations, suffering takes root. A person who expects everyone to always be kind will be hurt the moment someone is rude. A person who expects wealth to come effortlessly will be devastated when faced with struggle. A person who expects their partner to always understand them will feel betrayed when misunderstandings arise. In every case, the suffering is not from what happened, but from the gap between expectation and reality. Expectations are often built unconsciously. From childhood, society teaches people what they should expect. Success should be easy, relationships should always be smooth, happiness should be constant. But when reality does not fit this picture, people feel as if something is wrong. There is nothing wrong. Life is simply unfolding as it does. It is not here to match personal fantasies. This does not mean one should not aspire, dream, or plan for the future. It simply means that rigid expectations are a dangerous game. Life does not promise to fulfill your specific script. It flows in its own way, and sometimes what it brings is far better than what was expected if only one is open to seeing it. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you grip it tightly, trying to keep it all, most of it slips through your fingers. But if you hold it gently with an open palm, the sand remains. Expectations work the same way. The tighter you cling to them, the more they disappoint. But if you approach life with openness, adapting to whatever comes, you will experience far less suffering. Letting go of expectations does not mean giving up on life. It means embracing life as it is without demanding that it be a certain way. When things go differently than planned, instead of resisting, you can flow with them. Instead of saying this should not have happened, you can ask, what can I learn from this? Disappointment is born from expectation. Freedom is born from acceptance. If you want to suffer less, expect less. If you want to live fully, allow life to surprise you. You may find that what comes naturally is far more beautiful than what you once demanded. Attachment is the root of suffering because it binds you to things that are constantly changing. Everything in life, people, possessions, status, even your own body, is in a state of flux. Yet the mind seeks permanence in an impermanent world. It clings to things believing they will stay the same forever, and when they inevitably change or fade away, suffering arises. Look at how attachment works. You become deeply attached to a person believing they will always be with you, but people have their own journeys. Some relationships drift apart, some people leave, and some are taken by time itself. If your happiness depends on them never changing or never leaving, then suffering is inevitable. The problem is not in loving people, but in clinging to them with fear, in believing that your well-being is tied to their presence. True love allows freedom, while attachment breeds insecurity. Attachment extends beyond relationships. People become attached to wealth, to success, to status. They define themselves by what they own, the position they hold, the image they have built. But everything external is uncertain. Fortunes rise and fall, careers shift, the world's opinion changes in an instant. If identity is built on these fragile things, then every loss, every failure, every change will feel like a personal destruction. Even attachment to personal beliefs causes suffering. When you rigidly hold on to an idea of how life should be, how others should behave, or how the world should function, you set yourself up for frustration. Life does not conform to individual opinions. It moves according to its own nature. If the mind is too attached to its beliefs, it resists reality, and this resistance turns into suffering. Perhaps the deepest attachment is to one's own body in youth. People suffer as they age, not because aging is painful, but because they are attached to the idea of staying young forever. They see a wrinkle and feel fear. They notice their energy declining and feel despair. But aging is as natural as the sunrise and sunset. If one accepts it, it happens gracefully. If one resists, it becomes suffering. But letting go of attachment does not mean renouncing life. It does not mean you must give up relationships, success, or even desires. It simply means holding everything with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. Enjoy life, love fully, work towards your dreams, but do not build your happiness on the illusion that anything will remain unchanged forever. A river flows freely because it does not try to hold on to the water passing through it. It enjoys each drop, each moment, without clinging. This is the way to live, appreciating what comes, embracing what is, and gracefully letting go when it is time. If you learn to do this, suffering loses its grip and life becomes a journey of deep joy and freedom. The mind is like a restless monkey, constantly jumping from one thought to another, never still, never at peace. It pulls you into endless cycles of worry, regret, fear, and desire, making suffering a continuous experience. Most people do not realize that their suffering is not coming from the outside world, it is coming from within, from the unchecked chaos of their own mind. If you observe carefully, you will see that suffering does not exist in the present moment. It is always connected to thoughts about the past or the future. Regret, guilt, and resentment come from clinging to past experiences, replaying them endlessly. Anxiety, fear, and stress come from worrying about the future, imagining scenarios that may never happen. But if you ask yourself right now, in this very moment, what is wrong, you will often find that nothing is wrong except the thoughts in your head. The mind is an incredible tool capable of great intelligence, creativity, and insight, but if left uncontrolled, it turns against you. It creates stories about how life should be, and when reality does not match those stories, suffering begins. It magnifies small problems into great tragedies. It picks at old wounds, keeping them alive long after they should have healed. It creates expectations and then punishes you when those expectations are not met. Look at how much unnecessary suffering the mind creates. A person insults you, and instead of letting it go, the mind replays their words 1,000 times, deepening the wound. A relationship ends, and instead of moving forward, the mind clings to memories, refusing to accept reality. A mistake is made, and instead of learning from it, the mind keeps reminding you of your failure, making you feel small and unworthy. People assume that thinking is something they cannot control, that thoughts simply happen to them. But this is not true. Just as you can train your body, you can train your mind. You can learn to observe your thoughts instead of being consumed by them. You can choose which thoughts to entertain and which to let pass. You can shift your focus from suffering to clarity. Imagine you are sitting by a river. The water flows past forest carrying leaves and debris. If you jump in and grab onto a floating branch, you will be pulled into the current, struggling against the flow. But if you remain on the shore simply watching, you can see everything pass without being caught in it. This is how the mind should be approached. Let the thoughts come and go, observe them, but do not attach yourself to them. When you learn to master your own mind, suffering loses its power over you. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond with awareness. Instead of being controlled by fear, anger, or sorrow, you hold your inner space steady. The mind is not meant to be your tormentor, it is meant to be your greatest ally. The choice of how to use it is in your hands. Most people live as prisoners of their emotions, tossed around by waves of joy, sorrow, anger, and fear. When things go well, they are happy. When things go wrong, they are miserable. Their inner state is entirely dependent on the outside world, making them vulnerable to endless suffering. But emotions are not enemies. They are simply energies that arise and pass. The problem is not that emotions exist. The problem is that people identify with them too deeply, believing they are their emotions rather than something beyond them. Consider this. When anger arises, you say, I am angry. But is this true? Are you anger itself, or are you simply experiencing anger? A cloud may pass through the sky, but the sky is not the cloud. In the same way, emotions pass through you, but they are not you. The moment you create distance between yourself and your emotions, suffering begins to dissolve. The trouble is most people do not observe their emotions. They react to them. The moment sadness arises, they sink into despair. The moment frustration appears, they lash out. The moment fear creeps in, they become paralyzed. They do not realize that emotions left untouched have a natural life cycle. If you do not feed them with thoughts and reactions, they rise, exist for a moment, and then pass away on their own. But when you engage with them, replaying painful memories or fueling anger with justifications, you keep them alive far longer than necessary. Look at a child. They can be crying intensely one moment and laughing the next because they do not hold on to emotions. They let them flow naturally. But as people grow older, they begin to store emotions, clinging to them, nursing them, making them part of their identity. This is why suffering lasts far longer than it needs to. Emotions can be intense, but they do not have to control you. The key is awareness. Instead of getting lost in emotion, simply observe it. When sadness comes, recognize it. Sadness is here. When anger flares up, acknowledge it. Anger is passing through. This simple act of observation creates space between you and the emotion, allowing you to remain balanced rather than consumed. If you truly master this, no emotion can overpower you. You can feel deeply without being enslaved by feelings. You can experience pain without suffering. You can encounter joy without fearing its loss. Instead of being a puppet to your emotions, you become the master of your inner world. And when you master your inner world, external situations lose their power to disturb you. You live not as a slave to passing feelings, but as one who moves through life with clarity, stability, and deep inner peace. The root of much suffering lies in resistance. The refusal to accept what is. Life is constantly changing, but the mind resists change. Reality unfolds in unexpected ways, but the mind insists that things should be different. This inner struggle between what is and what is desired creates suffering. The more you resist, the more you suffer. The more you accept, the freer you become. Think about all the moments of suffering in life. A relationship ends, and instead of accepting it, the mind clings to what was, replaying memories, wishing things had gone differently. A failure occurs, and instead of learning from it, the mind fights against it, blaming circumstances, feeling defeated. Even something as simple as traffic on the road can cause suffering, not because traffic itself is painful, but because the mind refuses to accept it, getting frustrated instead of simply being present. Resistance is like standing in a river and trying to push the water backward. No matter how hard you try, the river flows as it will. The more you fight it, the more exhausted you become. But the moment you stop resisting and flow with the current, You discover a deep sense of ease. Life is like this. It is not here to match your expectations, it moves according to its own rhythm. If you learn to align with it rather than fight against it, you will suffer far less. This does not mean passivity. Acceptance is not the same as giving up. It simply means seeing things as they are before deciding how to respond. If something unpleasant happens, rather than saying this should not be happening, you recognize this is what is happening. How do I move forward wisely? When you accept reality, your response becomes clear and effective. When you resist, you remain stuck in frustration. The power of acceptance is immense. If someone insults you and you resist, you feel hurt, replay their words and let it disturb your peace. But if you accept that people say things based on their own nature, you remain untouched. If a challenge arises and you resist, it feels overwhelming. But if you accept it as an opportunity to grow, you move forward with strength. Most suffering is optional. It is not the situation but the resistance to it that creates distress. If you can train your mind to meet life as it is without unnecessary resistance, you will discover a freedom beyond what you imagined. Life will still have ups and downs, but you will not be shaken by them. Instead, you will move through life with grace, resilience, and a deep inner peace that no external force can take away. Many people spend their lives searching for meaning as if life is a puzzle to be solved or a destination to be reached. They believe that if they achieve certain goals, accumulate enough wealth, or gain the approval of others, they will finally find fulfillment. But the truth is, life has no fixed meaning. It is simply an opportunity. Whether you turn this opportunity into joy or suffering is entirely in your hands. Look at nature. A tree does not ask, "What is my purpose?" It simply grows, giving shade, bearing fruit, existing in harmony with life. A bird does not question whether its song has meaning, it simply sings. Only the human mind complicates life by constantly searching for something beyond what is already here. This endless seeking creates suffering because no external achievement, no philosophy, no grand idea will ever satisfy a mind that does not know how to be at peace with itself. People chase after meaning in relationships, careers, spiritual paths. But even when they achieve what they seek, the mind remains restless. The joy of success fades. The excitement of love settles into routine. The things that once seemed fulfilling lose their charm. Why? Because the search was never for these things. It was always for something deeper, something unnameable, something that cannot be found outside. The only true meaning of life is the experience of life itself. The beauty of existence is not in achieving something, it is in being fully alive in each moment. If you can sit under a tree, breathe deeply, and feel the joy of simply being, you have understood life. If you can smile without needing a reason, you have found what people search for endlessly. This does not mean abandoning all ambition or withdrawing from the world. It means realizing that meaning is not something to be found, it is something you create. If you bring joy to what you do, your work becomes meaningful. If you love deeply and freely, your relationships become meaningful. If you approach life with wonder rather than expectation, even the simplest moments become extraordinary. A person who stops searching and starts living fully will discover something incredible. Life itself is enough. There is no missing piece, no secret answer. Everything you need to experience deep fulfillment is already within you. The only question is, will you allow yourself to see it? Will you stop chasing and start living? If you do, suffering dissolves and life becomes what it was always meant to be, a magnificent, limitless dance of existence. So the question is not, why am I suffering for no reason, but rather, why am I holding on to suffering when life itself is an opportunity to be free? Suffering is not imposed upon you by the world, it is a creation of the mind, a result of expectations, attachments, resistance, and unconscious living. But the good news is, if suffering is created within you, it can also be dissolved within you. Life is happening now, in this very moment. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, but this moment is real, alive, and full of possibility. If you can meet it with openness, without the baggage of old wounds or the weight of imagined fears, you will see that suffering is not necessary, it is simply a habit. And like any habit, it can be broken. So, choose awareness over reaction. Choose acceptance over resistance. Choose joy over suffering, not because someone tells you to, but because life is too precious to waste in misery. The door to freedom is always open. You just have to step through.